Okay, welcome to 5-6. Copy down update your table of contents, update your title page. All right, we're going to do the quadratic formula today. So locate your formula sheet, and on the back page is the quadratic formula. If you do not have one of these, the sub will hand these out to you, and you can staple them inside your front cover when you get a chance. All right, and then the other stuff we need to write down is a little bit more about the discriminant. So just copy down the highlighted stuff. You don't need all the extra things. Okay, let's go through an example then. So x squared minus 8x equals 32. So we're going to use the quadratic formula, which was x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so what we're going to do is fill that in. Everywhere that you see a letter, we're going to put parentheses. So, and some of you are remembering the Pop Goes Weasel song that goes with this. So, x equals negative b plus or minus a square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, let's fill this in then. Oh, we can't fill this in yet because we don't have a 0. We have to rearrange this equation to get a 0 by subtracting 33. So really the equation we're going to use is x squared minus 8x minus 33 equals 0. Okay, our b term is right here. Make sure you take the sign with it, so it is negative 8. Next is our a term, which is out in front. There's no number there, so it's a 1. And then our c term is the last one. Again, take the sign with it, so it's negative 33. All right, here's where you want to grab your calculator. And we're first going to calculate the discriminant. So type that into your calculator without the square root button. And do it just as the parentheses show you there. So parentheses negative 8 squared minus 4, another parentheses 1, and another parentheses negative 33. And so you get 196. So negative 8 is positive 8, plus or minus the square root of 196 over 2. And I believe we could take the square root of 196. It comes out to be 14. Okay, now we will do 8 plus 14 divided by 2 and 8 minus 14 divided by 2, except you can't do this all in one step in your calculator. You have to do 8 plus 14, and you get 22, and then divide that by 2. So 11 is one of our answers. Then you do 8 minus 14, which is 6 divided by 2, and so 3 is our other answer. So the two answers are 11 and 3. Okay, so then the next problem, it says it has one rational root. So let's fill in our quadratic formula again. This time our b value is negative 34. Our a term is 1 again, and c is 289. Again, we start by calculating the discriminant. So type that in. And you should get 0. So then negative 34 is positive 34, plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. Square root of 0 is just 0, so 34 plus 0, or 34 minus 0, is still going to be 34. So this one will just have one answer, 34 divided by 2, which is 17. So if we wanted to think about what the graph would look like, it would just come down and touch the x-axis once at 17. The last problem we did would touch the x-axis twice. This one only has one root though. Okay, irrational roots. So let's start this one again by filling in the quadratic formula. this time b is -6. A is 1, and c is 2. Again, we start by calculating the discriminant. And remember, you don't put in the square root when you type that into your calculator. And we get 28 this time. So -6 is +6 plus or minus square root of 28 over 2. Okay, 28 does not come out as a nice number, but we have to look to see if we can simplify it at all. So working off to the side, how can we split apart 28? So that would be 4 times 7. So 2 square root of 7. So we rewrite it over here as 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 7 over 2. And then the last thing that we can do to simplify this is take the denominator over each part separately. So 6 over 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 7 over 2, and then reduce that. 6 over 2 becomes 3 plus or minus, the 2's cancel out, square root of 7. And that's as far as we can go on that problem. All right, let's try one that has some complex roots. Okay, again, this one doesn't have a 0 in it, so we're going to start by subtracting 6x. And make sure that you write it in descending order, x squared, then x, then no x's. Now we can fill in the quadratic formula. B is -6 again. A is 1, C is 13. So when we calculate the discriminant, we end up getting -16. So we write it as +6 plus or minus the square root of -16 over 2. Okay, we can't have a negative square root, so we have to take that out as an I. And then we know the square root of 16 is 4, so that becomes just 4i. And again, we split apart the denominator, so we say 6 over 2 plus or minus 4i over 2. And that becomes 3 plus or minus 2i. And that is as far as we can simplify that. If we were looking at the graph of this one, it would not touch the x-axis. So this does not have any real roots. It only has complex roots. Okay, so we're going to look at the discriminant a little bit more specifically now. So the discriminant, again, was b squared minus 4ac. So let's fill that in for this problem. B is 3, A is 1, C is 5. So we could type that in. And we get -11. Well, the discriminant is what we need to take the square root of. So if you take the square root of a negative number, you're going to end up with an imaginary number or a complex root. So this has 2 complex roots. And again, we know that from that table that we wrote down at the beginning of the lesson. And then the last problem for the day. Another discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac. Put in -11, 1, and 10. And this time we get 81. 81 is a positive number, And so it will be 2 real roots, but since it is a perfect square, it's actually 2 rational roots. If it was not a perfect squared number, it would be 2 irrational numbers. Okay, that is it for lesson 5-6. Make sure you write your questions and your summaries.